Please help me welcome Mr. Chad Jones.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. All right. Response. I like it. The hangovers can't be too bad, or the Advil's kicking in. That's where I'd be, right where you are right now if I was back there. Anyway, thank you very much for having me. Thanks to NAED to have me as well. I'm excited to share with you the Internet of Things and kind of an interesting perspective, hopefully you find it interesting, perspective on where the industry is going and how the rise of the machines is actually going to change everything we know about our world and how we interact with not only the world, but each other. So rise of the machines sounds a little Terminator-esque. I promise not to go too dark. I think it really is a hopeful vision. So a little bit more about my history. I actually have been at the center of a confluence of technologies that make up the Internet of Things. So I was part of Microsoft, seeing remote systems management for a while, virtualization of technology that aids in that remote control, which plays very big in the Internet of Things. I actually created and built Xively, which is the Internet of Things platform as a service for LogMeIn. Work closely with Google and other companies, GE, on how to actually bring those machines together and have them communicate. Because the key is the communication of everything together. It's really about the data. So the question I have for you is, are you data-driven? And what does that mean for electronics distributors? So let's get into it. So Automation Direct did a survey, 414 industrial customers. Now, 69.9% said data collection analysis is very important. I think that's kind of like motherhood and apple pie. It's kind of important. I know about my business. But what's interesting is where they're collecting data. 60% of them are using PLCs for data logging. That's an interesting place to have that, as opposed to 44% which are using a data logger, something that is centralized, that collects that information and I can address. Now, what they're actually collecting, temperature, pressure, electrical current, voltage data, those types of things. But data that's actually siloed in and of itself is really not useful. It needs to be able to interconnect with other things, other services, so that I can analyze them and get predictive about that. Now, 33% of the respondents are still analyzing things via Excel, right? That's not going to fly for very much longer. Now, 27% are using a database and analytics, but with the rise of something called machine learning and how we can get predictive about what's going to break down, how things should be repaired, in what timing, mean time to failures, all of these things can be calculated without having to teach the computer how to do it. It just learns. So we'll look at what that means. But the results are what's important. Just with where they are in the nascent collection and analysis of this data, even on Excel, 67% are seeing diagnostic and predictive maintenance improvement. That's a massive cost savings because they're able to analyze that data ahead of time. That pulls into the actual trends that we're seeing out there that the Internet of Things is driving. So dumb devices are becoming remotely addressable. Moore's Law allows us to get double the amount of circuits on the same piece of silicon. That means it drives down the size, but also increases the capability of that system using less and less power as well. And I can put something into, or a platform into something as small as, God, actually it's the size of a dime now from one thing I just saw, and actually have it be remotely addressable over the internet. Devices are becoming parts of solutions. Now, we already know this, it's not just flip on a switch anymore. It's obviously illumination services. We look around this room, and I'm sure they have an illumination service. It's remotely addressable, ties into some other software. But really where things are going is that data from all of the devices is just a building block for other solutions. Being able to tie in, yes, the lighting that's inside of here and the controls that are inside of here, but being able to sense what's the temperature of the room, what's the temperature outside, what's the heating system doing, how do all of those things tie together so that I know that if no one's in this room, let's make sure that I have the lights off, but let's do that in a way that says, okay, well, if I know someone's coming in and I want to turn on the heater, let's have those two things interact because the heat from the lights might actually warm up the room as well. So what's the most cost-effective place for that to turn on which and when? Manufacturers are starting to favor value-added resellers and systems integrators because there is a whole programmatic element to how devices are actually interacting. And those areas and those companies understand how you build those in a solution framework, right? So traditional IT ISVs and industrials are now muddying those waters because now you have Microsoft, Google, GE, GE's always been there, but jumping into this and actually working around a lot of distributors to try and focus on what's the best solution. Solutions are really the future of what's going on. Because if I'm just a piece part, just a component inside of something that's distributed to millions and millions of people, or millions and millions of objects, well, half a penny matters. If something's half a penny cheaper, it might go another way. But value added to that component in the framework of a solution that delivers data is really the key. So, there's 4 things I want you to take away from today's talk. First of all is what's the real role of the Internet of Things, right? The Internet of Things is part of something greater, and we'll go into that. Solutions drive success. That's the key to moving forward. I'll share some of the industry observations that I've seen, and then how do you disrupt the disruption that's hitting your businesses? Share some ideas there. So the first thing I want you to know, the Internet of Things is irrelevant. Thank you. Safe flights. No, of course you can't land the presentation there. But what I mean by that is the Internet of Things in and of itself, internet connecting something is of almost no value. It's a red herring. Yes, it sounds great, and 50 billion devices connected, and $1 trillion of market impact, and we've all heard the great things, right? But simply saying, oh, I want this table to be internet connected. So what? It's got to be part of something larger. Now, let me give you some proof on top of that. So this is the Gartner hype cycle from 2014. Yes, I know it's from 2014. If you notice at the top of the peak of inflated expectations, we have the Internet of Things, right? Awesome, everyone's talking about the Internet of Things, Internet of Things. Well, Gartner soon realized that the Internet of Things is not a thing in and of itself. You'll notice on the curve, can you see Internet of Things anywhere on there? It does say IoT platforms, but that's a very specific component enabling the Internet of Things, not the Internet of Things as a whole. It's starting to be broken down into different components because the Internet of Things itself is not what's important. So let's look at what is important. Now, there's something called the OPTI Internet Visualization Project. Everyone heard of OPTI? Okay. Well, what OPTI is doing is a piece of software that will ping an endpoint and its gateway, and then understand the connections between all of those networks. Now, it's pretty massive with the internet, right? So if we look at the internet circa, was it 2004? These are the connections that we had across the planet. Everything that we could actually reach and ping. Now, there are more network nodes than this, but it gives you a pretty good idea. Now, compare that with 2010. The exponential increase in the actual amount of network connections is unbelievable, and it's only going to get bigger. 50 billion more devices by 2025, 2030. You know, what does this look like? Well, just 5 years later, it's radically expanded, and every single day is exponentially growing. Well, why is that important? Because remember, the internet exists today. The Internet of Things is not this new thing that's going to replace the internet and all of those sorts of things. There are already things that exist that are worthwhile to businesses. Your customers already live there. Devices already live there. Data and analytics, applications, third-party services. All of these things exist through APIs, through services, UX, UI, all of these things that are using today. But physical objects have been, by and large, outside of the conversation and not reachable to these different services. So what the Internet of Things is doing is allowing these physical objects to be part of the conversation with everything else in the internet. So really, what's important is the Internet of Everything. Now, that's Cisco's term, all right? Now, all the ISVs are battling it out for what the terms are. Your industrial internet, which is GE, is very focused on industrial objects. Internet of Things, people are using, Salesforce uses the Internet of Customers. But to me, the Internet of Everything is the key, because this shows you the guidebook that you have to use to tie in to actually make relevant solutions that add value. Now, Anything that you build has to start with the why. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek that says, start with the why. Why are we doing something? Technology is a means to an end. What is the end? The end is that solution. So technology built for technology's sake without serving a first-order business or human use case is doomed to mediocrity or failure. Yes, I did just quote myself. I'm not above it. But if you think about that, someone asks you, I want to internet connect a refrigerator. That's awesome. What's the use case? It would just be cool. No, that does not work. It's got to be part not only of an immediate solution, but of a grander solution. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. So there's a company in New England called New England Biolabs. They do some really cool stuff. They actually are able to take these little tiny vials that are incredibly expensive. That makes me re-question my entire career because it's like $1,500 for this little vial. But essentially, they make DNA manipulation tools. So solutions that can actually cut DNA, clone DNA, and resplice DNA are some of the products that they actually bring. Now, their main customers are large pharma, biomedical, research houses, things like that, people that can afford to have multiple freezers of these things from multiple vendors inside of each of their labs, ready for their scientists to use. Now, the customer, which are the labs and researchers, want to accelerate experiments with pre-made reagents. Right now, ordering is a real manual process for them. They have to flip through a dog-eared catalog and call someone. Maybe they understand some things and not others. They don't fully know all of their options on top of that. They must properly store their products as well. They have to have another scientific freezer. Is that thing monitored? Maybe, maybe not. What if it was monitored? What's the end result of that going to be? Well, it can be expensive if all of a sudden I just bought 3 new vials at $2,000 each, and all of a sudden I walked away and left the door slightly open and they went bad. Right? What effect does that have on their experiment? The company wants to have an on-premise reagent supply at a level where it's known all the time what is inside of that freezer, so that they can get to that, fill the orders, prepare ahead of time to get those orders filled, see where the company's going so they can go to the R&D process, start thinking about what else they need to make and stock in those refrigerators as well. So initially, they said, Eureka, we've got it, the internet-connected freezer. Awesome. Right? So step back for a second and we think, well, why? Why are we internet connecting a freezer? The first step is, well, I'm just going to internet connect it. Okay. Well, then what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to see how many vials are inside of it. They can program it, and every time there's a point of sale, they'll just enter it, and I'll know that something got sold. Okay, fine. Well, what happens if the freezer door's left open? Can you detect that? Oh. What happens if the thing starts drawing more amps inside of the motor because a bearing's starting to warp or something? There's probably a mean time to failure calculation that can be had there, so I can get ahead of that. You monitor that? No. Do you know who's logging into your system? No. All of these questions, when you start thinking about what the real use cases are, lead to an exponentially better solution. Because now we can, once those use cases are defined, we can actually backfill that with technology. So we built this at Xively, and we actually built it in a very short amount of time. Now, the freezer is a wrapped freezer. It's just a normal freezer, a normal refrigerator, right? The thing costs like $300. There's nothing scientific about it. But what we did to it made it next generation. So we were able to wire up a magnetic lock, a touchscreen on the front that's network connected, back to a centralized cloud. And then we had monitoring on all of the components that are moving, drawing power. We have one of those things like in a Vegas hotel room where you have the weight sensors. So if you pick up that orange juice, it charges you right before you put it back down, right? So thanks for the inspiration, Vegas. So we put that inside of there as well. And then we know when the thing is stocked, positionally, where these different things are, how much they weigh, all of those things. So now what happens is that a researcher actually has a login. They have their badge. Now, this is quickly moving to actually just their mobile phone, right? Because a mobile phone is really your digital identity, moving through our digital world. They take their badge, they walk up, they tap it. It now knows who they are, right? So the first thing is, okay, that person's logging in the system. They then open the door. Well, they're sitting there for a little while, but with the door open, 60 seconds, they shut the door, and then they log out. That's probably a meaningful event. You've got to be able to understand and translate what these events mean so that you can continue to push forward the chain of sale. So what we've been able to do is take the systems that already exist for New England Biolabs, things like Salesforce Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud. Then we used Epicor. Actually, they were using Epicor for their supply chain management as well. Heroku was actually the application platform that we use. And then we are looking at tying in a machine learning element like Watson, right, to actually get ahead of these things through cognitive computing and machine learning. Now, what we were able to achieve through this is be able to, first of all, when that scientist taps in and they get that 60 seconds of the door open and then they shut it, well, by the time they're walking back, what we've done is taken that event, sent it to Marketing Cloud, and based on the rules and triggers that came through the centralized cloud, it generated an email that said, hey, we saw that you opened up the refrigerator for 60 seconds, and then when you shut it, maybe you have some problems understanding how to use the system or what's in here. Here's the information you need. Now, what we've been able to do there is actually kind of a mini sales nurture flow. But the person doesn't think of it that way. They think of it as just-in-time help, and that's welcome. They're open to that. So they sit down, they look at it, and go, oh yeah, that's how you use it. So they go back, tap in their badge again, open it up, and they pick up proteinase line A, they pick up proteinase line B. Don't worry, we don't charge them just for picking up. So they put it down, and they're like, shut the door, log out. Again, by the time they get back to their desk, there's another email that says, hey, we saw you touch proteinase line A and proteinase line B. This is what they do, what experiments they're for. Oh, cool, I need proteinase line A. They go back, they log in, open the door, pick up proteinase line A, shut the door, scan it, automatically charges them, and they log out. The job of the researcher is not to figure out what to buy. The job of the researcher is to do research, right? But the job of the company is to sell them that in the most expeditious way possible. Because we've thought about that use case and tied into the systems that we have here, we're able to do that in a manner that moves them along the behavior path that we want them to get to, do it efficiently, because we understand how they're interacting with the system, the metadata of interaction, not just the fact that they actually bought something. So now that further informs things. The sale is registered into the revenue system. Sales Cloud sees how much they're actually using so they can do analytics on that later on. And you actually have instant revenue recognition because the system knows I've already bought that. And I can file that down. So financials get to become more predictable as well. I get much more data on top of that. And then at a certain time of the month, Epicor will kick in and say, okay, let's look at everything that was purchased. Let's see things that are not purchased. And let's come up with an automated order that will go out and refill that system. But the beauty of that as well is you can start to get predictive about that. Now, they're using predictive analytics outside of Watson today, but imagine if we start adding things like machine learning, where a computer can look at all of the details that are going on, and with very little supervised learning, it will come up with a weighted model that says these are the most likely trajectories of where the actual experiments are going. Well, that's great for R&D, because R&D can sit there and say, well, I need to start working on more lines of things to feed, Genzyme, Biogen, whoever's experimentation lines, right? And that gets ahead of the competition. But then also they're saying, well, you're probably in phase 2 of these trials. It looks like when you start using more of this particular line, you're about to move to phase 3, start stocking more phase 3 type of agents. So again, when the user comes up to the system, they're like, oh, they always have what I want at the time I need it, and they're developing things ahead of when I need them, and I didn't even know I needed them. These are pretty smart people too. So pulling all of this together is really the crux of how you create an intelligent, data-focused system that is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, we look into the future and we say, okay, where is this going? On the bottom, you'll see that we have the connected lab. That's what we just talked about, the connected lab. But there are so many other things that are occurring today as well. You have connected life, the quantified self. Anyone have a Fitbit? It's sitting in your drawer at home, isn't it? I think 64% of all Fitbits actually end up as drawerware. Okay, you got one? Cool. All right, right on. How many steps today? Don't answer it. When you're running for the airport later. So quantified life is huge, or connected life is huge, because things that affect your health are a huge part of where you live. Radon. Do you know if you have radon or not? I don't think I do. I checked it when I first moved in like 15 years ago. But do I have it now? I don't know. It's pretty cheap to throw on a constant radon detector inside of your home. You already have one for carbon monoxide and for fire. Why not one for radon? Things, a crisis situation. I've fallen and I can't get up, right? Pushing those buttons. Well, how many times has that happened? Even your Fitbit, how many times did you fall down? Did you sleep? All of those things are critical. CPAP machines, how many times a week did someone use it? What's the sleep patterns? All of those things being recorded have meaning, but right now they're siloed on your PC or siloed in a cloud that doesn't talk to anything, and every once in a while you actually look at it. But the future will tie that in between, in a compliant manner, HIPAA compliant, all of that. So the research lab can start pulling population health data and start doing experiments that match and better inform their experiments. And that increases the quality of healthcare. And then preventative care feeds back to that as well. So your Fitbit can tell you to do more things so that you take better care of yourself. Your doctor, if you get 10 minutes with your doctor, I mean, it's pretty rare. And, we're looking at where the cost of healthcare is going and all of those types of things. Well, instead of sitting down and doing the diatribe of things that I think are wrong or not wrong, and of course they're not wrong right now when I'm talking to you. It's amazing how just being in a doctor's presence seems to cure everything. What if they pulled up a tablet and said, oh, well, let's look all of your history. And machine learning has looked at it and said, here are the top 5 things that I'm seeing for this person's health that could be an issue. In the healthcare field, there was a study where machine learning actually out-predicted heart attacks in patients, in 344 patients, by, I think it was 21% better than doctors. And that's right now, and that's early. Right? Imagine if we feed it more data. Imagine we fed it your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed. Do you like to debate politics? That's probably really stressful. That has an impact on what you do. Wouldn't that be good to cross-reference that with the rest of your life so you could understand that? And then that connected caregiver is not there only for preventative care and those types of things, but when you have an acute situation, a crisis situation, a heart attack, something like that, the connected hospital not only is going to give your loved ones the fastest place to park so they can come back and see if you're okay, get you the quickest gurney as soon as the ambulance hits the doorway, get you to the right room, assign the right doctor so everyone meets at exactly the right time, and then be able to monitor you over time to look for changes, predict those actual changes when you're sitting in ICU, something like that. All of that can become a reality. Where should the crash cart be inside of the hospital? What's the optimal location? Well, by knowing with GPS where it is, how many times it's used, how many people are on average, what's the average temperature, locations, doctors, I can actually predict where that crash cart should be because the highest amount of incidents at certain times can be predicted. And I can have that crash cart as close to those patients that need it as possible. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It literally runs as broad as your imagination, and that is the opportunity for the value add. The Internet of Things opportunity landscape is massive. I said earlier, ignore the 50 billion, all that, but this is important. Wherever your imagination can run to, whether it's in working with buildings or energy, consumer and home, healthcare, life sciences we just talked about, industrial, transportation, retail, security, public safety, IT networks, all of these things and the fan out of what they touch is absolutely massive. Now, it's not only just those areas that you can touch, it's if some other solution's inside of there, well, how do you build on top of that solution? Because that has an opportunity in and of itself. Products that interconnect are something that should be on the prime of your mind. Because if we think about the Nest thermostat, right? We've all heard the Nest thermostat's the poster child for the Internet of Things, all of that. Google bought Nest for a reason. The reason isn't, hey, I have a remote control thermostat that learns. That's part of it. But the back office side in the cloud of what Nest does is a really elegant API and machine learning system that collects all of the data and allows it to learn your patterns. But then they added a second device, Nest Protect. So it's a gesture-based carbon monoxide detector and smoke detector. But you know what? It also has temperature, humidity, motion detection, all of these things. Both of these devices do. So what's Google doing? Starting to map where I'm walking around the house, how many people are in my house, how often. All of that metadata comes together to better serve your needs and better serve your temperature control and eventually whatever else is going to happen because it's all tied to your profile. And now they have the Nest ecosystem. August locks, some of the washer dryers with, I think it's Whirlpool, Bosch, I forget which one, are now all tied in through this elegant API, and they all can communicate with each other. Now, we're pretty early on. I don't know, what the Nest Protect and my washing machine are going to talk about. But imagine my washing machine could sit there and say, well, what's the ambient temperature outside? What's the temperature inside my house? What's the temperature going to be tomorrow? What are electrical rates when the temperature is higher? Well, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to throw my clothes in and say, you decide when to wash it if it's not an emergency. The washer figures out all of those things, or the cloud does, and then turns my washer on when it's most electrically, economically viable from a cost perspective. Right? That's the type of things that are coming. So we need to also think about this as an autonomic computing chain. Anyone heard of the concept fog computing from Cisco? Anybody? Cool, all right. So essentially what fog is a decentralized system of sensors, actuators, and compute points that are connected in a bidirectional network that reduce response latency. So think about if I threw you a ball, right? And most of us are trained to catch, I imagine. So if the ball is coming at me, I'm not thinking in my head, I see a ball coming, look shoulder, put it up, take elbow, move up, wrist over, open finger 2, finger 3, finger 4, finger 5, open, coming in, palm, ball, toes, finger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, push down, right? No, it's an autonomic response. It's a reaction. Now that reaction is built into the chain of neurons that are coming through your muscles and into your muscles, muscle memory. So if something gets thrown into it, it's just reactionary. Sometimes you don't have to look to catch something. Depends on what it is. So that same principle is moving into computing. Now, fog computing allows even more opportunity because there are compute points, electronic points in between the application, the other compute points, the cloud, and the devices and the users that all have the potential for intelligence and to add to the overall solution. So we think about a device 1, device 2, may have some sensors, may have some actuators, things like that. But they all connect to a gateway. Now, whether that gateway is a one-to-one relationship, a pump with the gateway that translates things that it's sensing locally into something that's internet capable, or you have multiple devices talking to a single gateway, something like Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth Low Energy, something like that, that talks to an independent gateway, or your phone. Your phone is a gateway as well. Your Fitbit talks to your phone, right? That's a gateway to actually translate that information up to the cloud. Well, there are points along there that you can actually install intelligence. The gateway, the device itself. But then the device, or the gateway, can actually talk to the edge. Now, edge computing devices, certainly Cisco is doing this, they're building intelligence into the edge device itself. So instead of having to go all the way out to the cloud and do calculation, which is high latency event, for things that could be relatively simple, I can just get to the edge, make a decision, come right back. Now, some of that reaction can be handled maybe at the edge, maybe handled at the gateway, handled the device itself, but then can roll up metadata and say, I need a bigger decision on this, but I don't really care about the time. So it will send it up to the cloud, and the cloud will sit there and say, okay, cool, I'll calculate this out, I'll do some machine learning on it, and I'll give you back something that changes your configuration to better match what your historical environment is doing with you. So the application ties on top of that and can actually connect with, at any point, with some of these solutions as well. So the app, especially with the modern smartphone, which has more power than the Apollo command capsule now, which is really interesting, you can actually put a lot of logic inside of there and directly connect to your local system and have your phone deal with that as well. But the point is that there are so many other opportunities inside of the solution to tie into, to apply the data, to apply the software, and if the end components are intelligent enough and have enough connectivity to take advantage of that, then the overall solution is exponentially better. So a couple interesting things in observations of the industry. So obviously we all know what Tesla's doing, battery walls. I don't know if you've seen the new solar panels they have that look like normal roof tiles. That's pretty awesome. I think that's a game changer coming up. But some other things in power are really interesting where the U of W actually created something called an ambient backscatter catcher. So essentially there is so much energy that's inside of the airwaves right now moving through us, Wi-Fi signals, radio waves, things like that, that you can actually harvest that energy. So the U of W ambient backscatter actually put a credit card, kind of a credit card, very thin, and with no battery inside of it, was able to transfer a digital, a numeric amount between two different cards, no battery. And they do it over a very short distance. It's pretty early. But think about that. I can walk around with something that doesn't have to be powered. I don't have to charge it. I can just walk around and have that battery, just take things that are coming from the environment. It's free energy, almost. We also have flexible batteries now. Those batteries can be placed in a jacket, shirt. Maybe I want to be able to charge something that's monitoring me as I'm doing athletic performance. We have very thin batteries that are bendable that will not get in the way of movement. Think about that in military applications, space, all of those things. It could be huge. But one of the most exciting things that I've seen is something called wireless electricity through magnetic resonance. We're all familiar with Nikola Tesla, right? Big fan, right? Got robbed. That's a whole other story. But his big thing was, look, let's create a set of magnetic resonance fields to transfer energy, but let's do this freely. Let's erect these big towers and everyone can have wireless electricity and away we go. What a beautiful vision. Well, one company is actually capitalizing on top of that. Over 113 patents on it right now. The company's called Witricity. Now, this is a magnetic resonance system, right? This is actually a solar chargeable battery or portable battery. So I can leave this out in the sun, charge this thing. Luckily, it is charged. So turn this on. Okay. So now this pad is energized in the coil that it is sitting inside of here, right? Now, okay, don't worry. I'm going to turn it towards me. It's okay. It's fine. We're good. But so what happens is if I move this coil inside of it, it will actually light up. No space in between it, right? Now, we've seen some of this. Obviously, we've seen this before, toothbrushes, all of that. But these things are actually charging BMWs and Nissan Leafs now at 11 kilowatts, right? Well, that's interesting, especially when you can put it right through your head and it's completely safe, right? Don't worry, the brain damage was there before. It's not going to cause any damage. You ask my friends. But so what if we took this and we slid it under a road? There's actually passive repeaters that can go with this to a certain, that will take the chain and move it over without having to add additional power. Now, it only goes so far. Obviously, you need the next repeater. Well, what if a hybrid is actually driving over, and as they drive, it charges? Now, I'm not saying an EV, like interstate trucks where there's nothing out there for miles and miles. That's a really good candidate as a hybrid because the game is miles per gallon. It's not, let's just make everything electrical. We're not ready for that. Besides, if we actually are going to transmit energy, it takes 1.5 watts of energy generated to make 1 watt at your outlet, right? Okay, it's a lot of loss. Well, what if I put alternative energy sources, wind, solar, hydro, all of that, out in the middle of nowhere where interstate trucks are, especially in the middle of the country, and they didn't have to long haul anything. Maybe they don't even have to store it. They actually just have the cell in the road right next to it, a few hundred yards away, powering that, and then as cars drive over it, they're actually dynamically charged. So I did a TEDx talk on this. If we did that around just the interstate trucking lines, we would actually save around 10 to 12% on fuel savings. That equals a 4-day oil hiatus in the country, not a drop, used for 4 whole days in the country. Billions of dollars, CO2, all of that sort of stuff has huge benefit. You talk about an infrastructure project, that can be a platform. Because what could cars do with that? Well, you have to retrofit the cars, make new adjustments to the cars. Alternative energy, maybe a tax credit helps with that. A lot of opportunity inside of that, and now infrastructure becomes truly a stimulative platform. But where else can I use this? So many different applications. Now that it's not just the toothbrush has to be in a certain spot and use it, I can do it while I move. What can you create with that? So how many of you have Microsoft Xbox at home? Or your kids? Or I'm a giant kid, so I've got one. But the Kinect is the actual visual and audio receptor of the Xbox. You talk to Xbox, of course I kind of yell at my Xbox. She's a little temperamental at times. But, behind the Xbox is just, some high definition cameras, things like that. But what it does is unbelievable and unbelievably scary. So for those of you who have it, if you walk by, even remotely in the wide angle of the Kinect, it says, boop, hi Chad, welcome back. I'm like, whoa, I didn't say anything. I didn't log into anything, whatever. It knows the second that my profile hits its field of vision, who I am, what my profile is, and starts recording what's going on. By the way, it's always recording. It's always recording what's going on in the room. Now, there are some limitations to what it does, but once it knows your profile, this is actually a look from one of an app using it. Skeleton, orientation, muscle and force, your heart rate, what's your expression? What happens when you have a couple people over? Well, it starts files on all of them. It may not know who they are, but it knows that there's something going on. And you know what? If you log into a service and it sees your actual skeletal profile, it will connect the two, and now it's starting to learn more and more and more and more. Big opportunity. What's your expression? There's a reason why Xbox connects to your television. Because when I'm watching something, if I'm flipping through the channels, stopping on a channel for a certain amount of time, flipping back and forth a lot, am I doing that? Who's holding the remote? Is the person next to you looking at their phone? Are they dismayed by what they're watching? All of that is very valuable data, especially when we're washing content from all sorts of different channels. How do you get more intelligent about that? I also want you to remember that people are things too, right? We're a carbon-based subjective sensor, if you will, the original actuator, right? So you have to think about that because people play an important part in technology as sensors and actuators. You think about Waze, right? Like I use Waze because I gotta duck cops. I go north and I go really fast a lot. So, thank God for Waze. But really, Waze, if I wanted to censor up where every police, is out there or every accident's happening, it's not possible, right? It's just not possible. But if I have humans driving down the road and they go, oh, cop, push a button, cop, visible, done. Pops up on the map. I am now part of the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything. Now, of course, police urge Google to turn off stalking feature on mobile apps for drivers. It's a stalking feature. I don't know if that has anything to do with the annual US speeding citation revenue of $6.2 billion a year. I'm not sure it has anything to do with that. Of course, it's a stalking feature. Of course, you've never heard of any cop getting attacked because Google, Waze told you where they are. But anyway, people can be an integral part of your sensing strategy as well. Of course, security is a massive opportunity and a big problem. The FCC, if you think, anyone hear of the D-Link case where with the baby monitor? Guy gets up at 2:30 in the morning, hears someone screaming dog commands, goes running into his toddler's room, and his D-Link baby monitor had gotten hacked. And actually, they were telling the kid, sit, roll over, bark. Like 2:30 in the morning, the kid's just staring at it. Ripped it out of the wall, right? So security through obfuscation is no security. Basically, that's what D-Link did. They figured, well, no one's going to be able to search for it. It's going to be behind a Soho firewall, all sort of stuff. Sorry. Easily hacked. There's a search engine called Shodan. Shodan actually goes out and crawls the internet looking for insecure interfaces of Internet of Things devices. She put a chill down everybody's back because your always-on devices very soon are going to be part of the Internet of Things if they aren't now. Your smart TV. We just know that they can, CIA, flip that thing on. NSA, flip that thing on pretty much whenever they want. Right? I've got a Band-Aid over mine. Every single one of my cameras. But anyway. Machine learning, part of artificial intelligence. Amazing, scary. Elon Musk is running for the doors already, thinking we need to shut it down, all this sort of stuff. He's partially right, because we always think it's the Terminator. Skynet will become self-aware in November, and of course that date's already passed, but we weren't too far off. James Cameron's kind of a prophet, and Google scares the hell out of me. But it's going to be a critical part of getting a deeper understanding of what's going on in our world and how to better interact. Everything is going to be affected by it. So machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that provides computers with the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. Yes, I can supervise them, give them a little bit of learning, build a model, but it's going to start to wait and learn itself. And then it can change, that code can change, those results and weights can change when it's exposed to new data, so it is constantly learning. This is above and beyond predictive analytics. So the four main types are out there. There's deep learning, which are more artificial neural networks. Cognitive computing, with some of what Watson's doing, simulates how the brain actually deals with information. It's getting better and better. Predictive analytics takes all of that. It has likely outcome scenarios. If you want to freak yourself out, check out a company called Recorded History, right? I forgot the name of the company. Anyway, what they're doing is looking at the Google and Twitter firehose and running machine learning predictive algorithms to see things like, well, is there a possible terror outbreak going to come in, likely to come into certain areas of the world based on what Twitter is doing, based on cross searches, all of those things. How are financial markets going to move? It's not surprising that they're backed by the DoD and, and venture arm of a lot of financial institutions. But one of the most interesting ones is called sentiment learning. So Watson has a really killer sentiment learning algorithm that identifies 52 states of how you feel. Well, imagine that. I take my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and I cross-reference that with environmental information, and it can start to understand, the system can understand, the solution can understand how I feel about what's going on. You know, is it 85 degrees inside of here? In my Twitter feed, you know, they started reading that and unstructured data, I'm putting a bunch of negative words. It's probably too hot. You know, very simple example. On Facebook, I do like to debate a lot, and but I keep my Facebook nice and closed because, you know, don't want to get that out there. But the debate patterning that I go with some of my friends is kind of blood sportish, okay? We like to go at it. But I noticed in the sponsored ad sections of Facebook, it says, angry all the time? Perhaps you should breathe because stress isn't as good for you, and here's a program to help you in a sponsored ad. I'm like, ooh, it knows that I'm not, I'm kind of angry about some of these things. What else do you know? Turns out Facebook knows everything. Think about the concept of timeline. Timeline is the scariest thing because timeline with predictive algorithms and now how I feel about things knows that as I go along my life trajectory, I'm probably publishing on Facebook. I'm seeing likes and people, and with photo recognition as instant as it is, I can pull all that information together and I can start targeting ads based on predicted trajectories on where I'm going to go in my life. You know, 22, 23 years old. Oh, look, it's your second anniversary, you know, with your girlfriend or significant other. Oh, you know, maybe it's marriage time. Oh, maybe start putting some marriage ads out there. Oh, you're angry all the time? Damn it, I gotta get married. It's the language of the ad, right? Or you're happy all the time. Wow, blissful, why not make it permanent, right? All of those things can come together and have this massive possibility. But again, it's only limited by the imagination. So, a lot of us the joy of painting, Bob Ross, you know, early days in college watching a different mindset. But this is machine learning watching Bob Ross. Now, if you can see inside of here, yes, it's all psychedelic. Bob did not paint on himself. This is Google's Deep Dream. And what it's doing is looking and analyzing and trying to predict what it's seeing. We're all used to the heads-up display view of the Terminator walking around and analyzing stuff. It's not even remotely how machine learning looks at it. Machine learning is looking at all of the different possible data points to try to understand its universe. What you're looking at is a digital infant's eyes looking at its world. So right now you look at the patterning of the middle lower picture. You see kind of like I think it's a French horn or something inside of his palette, because it doesn't know what his palette is yet. So it's trying to run different images to see does it fit the actual parameters so it can identify what that is. And it's doing that at a rate that's just astonishing because the video is moving at 24 frames per second. And it's keeping up with it. Now, it doesn't quite know where it's looking at yet, but it will. It will. Because the actual cloud capacity of Google is astronomical in its compute power to deal with this. So, a lot of cool opportunities, things like that, but you know, more importantly, how do you disrupt the disruption that's coming at you? And I think there are 4 ideas that could be helpful. They're not meant as the end-all be-all, but maybe spur some ideas for you. So I think the first thing is that you have to embrace the value add. Right? That's really important. Acquire and market a combination of products, services, IT skill sets, and partners that enable solutions. Now, you don't have to be all of those. But you have to be aware and provide a value add on top of providing just really cool electronics. Right? How does that thing fit into an overall solution? What's a big market that needs an add-on to that overall solution? Are you able to be Google Nest capable and tie into that ecosystem? What happens if you provided other things that could all of a sudden look at carbon monoxide detectors and thermostat information, all of those things? That should be inside of your brain. Get close to the customer, right? You've had an abstraction layer, traditionally, it seems, between who the actual customer is through the contractor, things like that. That's got to change. You've got to learn how to communicate solutions through sales, going in with your contractor, going in with the value-added reseller, and be able to speak to not just the CEO or the vice president of operations, something like that, but be able to speak CTO talk. CTO language, and be able to talk to the CFO too, because the use cases are what's important. It's like, yeah, great, I sell illumination solutions, but let's talk about your use cases. And I imagine you're having problem A, problem B, problem C in business terms. Yeah, I am. Well, we've got this type of solution that solves that problem, saves you money, increases your sales. Become data-driven. So identify products that are built to interact with others and leverage them to tie into successful solutions. As I said, that Nest ecosystem, what Predix is doing over at GE, tie into those types of things. Become very close with them, and that means expanding your partner strategy. What can Microsoft do for you with Azure IoT services? What can Google do with you? They have very robust partner channels. I'm ex-Microsoft, I've seen it. They're really, especially under Nadala, they're really interested in getting partners in the IoT moving very quickly. And they have a whole range of services that are amazing in Azure, in their cloud service. Healthcare is amazing under Azure. So I would really challenge you to go out and think outside the box and start getting IT-ish, if you will, around these solutions and get that type of intelligence both on the solution side and on the sales side so that you can come in and have a better value add together. So, in conclusion, the historic paradigm shift is on. I really believe that we're going to have the next industrial revolution. It's here, it's now. Everything old will become new again. Why is that? Because I can sensor it up. I can put an actuator on it and extend its life and monitor these things. There's a whole new type of sets of devices that are coming out that can interact, and everything will have some sort of data around it and be able to communicate with everything else as well. We have to think about it in those terms because it is nothing short of a seismic shift. The IoT is a subcomponent of the Internet of Everything. We have to think of it in terms of that holistic system, not just internet connecting something. That in and of itself holds almost no value. How do I pull it together into something larger? Data-centric solutions that serve a defined use case are really key. How do you come up with a solution that will plug into something that serves a greater use case? Business, human, philanthropy, whatever. Right? How do you understand that and really know that it's the data that is the key? Right? There could be the short term, immediate reactive systems coming from that data. The medium term, something gonna happen over the next day or two. And then there's the long term. How can I analyze trends over time to understand what a mean time to failure is? Right? Imagine a service chain that looks at that freezer we talked about and said, well, I'm pulling more amps out of those things. Let's go ahead and schedule a truck roll. And when the truck roll shows up, it's not a truck, it's a Prius with one part because they know exactly what's wrong with it. I don't have to sit there and feed through manuals. It comes with a simple instruction set, and the person just walks in, flips it before all that stuff goes bad, the refrigerator dies. The customer may not even know, right? They could also, part of that intelligence, if the stock can actually hold a 2 or 3 degree temperature variance, well, why can't the system just turn down or turn up the temperature a little bit by those 3 degrees, slow the motor down, and buy itself another 3 days and calculate a mean time to failure so a truck actually can get there in a time that's has the greatest advantage from a cost perspective in that service role. All of that's possible, but you have to think about it from a data-centric position. Now, businesses must expand to reduce commoditization risk. It's the biggest fear. We end up having, or one of the biggest fears, we end up having this great solution, and half a penny matters when I'm shipping 3 million units or more, right? It matters. Well, what happens if I have vendor A and vendor B and their solution's half a penny cheaper? Sorry, right? Unless there's more value. That value then presents strategic opportunity, and that value is worth something. Someone might actually be willing to pay a cent more, 2 cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, who knows, because you have that value. But you have to go figure out what that is and be in that mindset to actually embrace this next industrial revolution called the Internet of Things. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to be hanging out a little bit afterwards or in between the sessions. I'm actually on time. I would like you to take a picture. This is a miracle. Hopefully this was informative. My email is chad@plesoventures.com. Please feel free to reach out, link me in, and enjoy the rest of your fly safe tonight.